Hello, welcome to Cineverm, a podcast discussing films in and out of the cinema. My name is Anthony Renteria, and today I'm joined by David
Hello.
and Helen Albee Cottingham.
Hello, it's me.
And this week we are discussing the 2011 film Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn and written by Hussein Amini, and it stars Ryan Gosling, Carey Mulligan, Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks, Oscar Isaac, Christina Hendricks, and Ron Perlman. And here's a quick synopsis. A mysterious Hollywood stuntman and mechanic moonlights as a getaway driver but finds himself in trouble when he helps out his neighbor, which is never good. As always, we will begin with a spoiler-free review, and then after our ratings, we'll dive into a full spoiler discussion. So, this is one of Helen's picks for this little schedule we got going on here, so I had to begin with you, Helen. What were your initial impressions? Because this was a first watch for you, right?
Yeah, I was impressed by it. These movies that have a huge reputation as being taught at film school, one of the most beautiful movies ever. Every film bro loves them. So many people adore them. Great filmmakers like Anthony Renteria, it was their film awakening. They either fall completely flat and are not worth the hype, or they're actually legit. And this movie was definitely legit. It was definitely beautiful to look at. The music hit me just right. The performances were all perfect except for Albert Brooks, which I will talk about more, I guess, later.
No.
Man, I have a whole thing about Albert Brooks. Anyway. But yeah, no, this movie is worth the hype. This movie is everything everyone says it is, and I'm so relieved, because I hate to have a movie be so well regarded and then watch it and be like, I don't get it. But I get this. For sure.
Awesome. So like Midsommar was probably the high regarded downer for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, David, I know you've seen this movie before. What did you think about this watch? Did it hold up? Did it get better? Did it get worse? What were your initial impressions?
Yeah, it got better. I already had a high regard for it. It was one of my film awakening movies, sort of. It's just my aesthetic. I don't know. It just hit all the right aesthetics for me, just personally. And yeah, just watching it again this time, it's like, God, everything is so on point. Like the cinematography, pacing, the edit, the acting, just everything, the music. So yeah, it only improved on this viewing.
For me, this movie, I think I've talked about it many, many, many times. But yeah, this is like my definitive film awakening. Like, I do not think I would be sitting here if it wasn't for this movie. And so it has a huge, I guess, impact on my life, and it means a lot to me. And I watched it in like a very fundamentally sad and confused time in my life. So it was like a beacon of light and hope. And yeah, just it still holds up, which I'm so happy about. Like, I don't really rewatch my favorite movies, if ever. So it's probably been like 7 years since I watched this movie, because I watched it on opening weekend when it originally came out in 2011. So it's been a long, long time. It was pretty magical still. And that's with like me having a very terrible watching experience last night.
Did you fall asleep again?
No. But I was damn near close, because like I didn't start watching it till like 9:30, 9:45, and I was exhausted. My monitor sucks. My audio system sucks. But this movie still grabbed me in like all the big moments. Like, I think this movie is so like spectacular in the way it plays with, like, there's key scenes that just feel like hypnotic daydream kind of sequences. In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me, like we talked about The Shining recently, and it kind of reminds me of that. Like, there is a lot of I guess empty space, empty sound, like it's almost like that kind of art that we talked about, that Lynch does as well, which is like almost it leaves air to breathe creatively. And this film does that, but then it also fills it with this like aesthetic that y'all are talking about, which is like this weird cyber, like poppy, I don't know, like vaporwave kind of aesthetic that just feels like what you imagine LA would sound like this movie feels like. And to me, being born like close to LA, but never really living there or being able to go there, like this is the fantasy of LA that I dream of, is just riding around in the night listening to these songs that are so amazing. And like at the time were not popular. Like none of these artists or songs were like really that popular. Like they weren't mainstream. And like the way this film essentially catapulted all these artists and songs and the like just vibe and aesthetic of this movie into like the zeitgeist. Like this is like a definitive moment for a lot of like cinema, I think.
I have some questions about the soundtrack if you're done with your spiel. I feel like when there's a really unique and arresting and perfect for the film soundtrack that isn't just a score, there's a million imitators afterward. Like with Juno, everything was like lo-fi folk songs for a while. And I feel like there were no imitators to this, like, and there should have been. And maybe I'm just not well watched in this genre or something, but yeah, where are the other like moody electronic film soundtracks? I want more movies that sound like this. And why didn't that catch on?
The only other that I can think of that reminds me of this is the director Panos Cosmatos, I think is his name. And he directed a few like the Mandy with Nicolas Cage recently, and then Beyond the Black Rainbow, and like other movies that came out. I just looked up Beyond the Black Rainbow, came out in 2010, but it's got the same like 80s synth vibe to it, like retro vibe. That's kind of cool.
But I feel like that guy is way more dirty with his songs. Like it's like almost like a layer of like metal-ish, or maybe I'm just thinking of Mandy, but there's a lot of distortion where this is very clean.
Yeah, this movie
and like
was very clean, very soothing.
More optimistic of an 80s sound,
And that's one thing, like I went into a whole deep dive with the director's interviews and stuff, and like his main primary like obsession was how to get this to sound very feminine. And like I felt it a lot this watch, and I've always felt it, and I think that's why I've always like kind of secretly loved it, is because it's a very like feminine kind of film, or at least it feels like very romantic and like warm and like soft and clean. But then obviously the movie has these like freakish outbursts of violence, but the core like driving force is this like soft fairy tale like, you know, essence. Like it's not wanting to be loud. It's almost like this beautiful thing that doesn't really want to be seen. And I feel like that is like the sound, and like the song choices are all, well, most of them are women singing. And then even the one male song, which is Night Call by Kavinsky, it's very like romantic and hopeless. And it's like literally about a guy just wanting to call a woman, and he is like essentially a monster, which is kind of like the whole metaphor of this film. And I also love like how you said, like all these songs for me, because I am like super against songs in movies, and that was something I was worried about, because like I developed that like after I watched this movie. It was probably like a lot of the Tarantinos and like Guardians of the Galaxy and like those kind of movies that kind of made me dislike like songs in movies, because they felt very easy or like obvious. And rewatching this movie, I loved how every song only plays when there's an emotional moment of reflection for the main character. Like if you actually like go back, if you were to turn on the lyrics while you're watching a scene, it's literally what's happening in his head or psyche, or in other characters' heads or psyches, with the real love, real human being, like a real hero, the night call, like all those things happen in moments of a character processing information. And I really, really love that. So like in this movie, it feels like all the songs are, it almost works more like a musical, is what I noticed. Like it's we're getting into this character's head that we don't really get to see because he doesn't talk much. At least that's why it worked for me. Did y'all, like, I guess you thought it did work, Helen?
Yeah, I'm so stuck on what you said about making this movie seem feminine. Like, really interesting and strange. And I like the contrast. It's almost like the movie or the people who made these style choices are apologizing for the fact that this movie doesn't pass the Bechdel test and doesn't have very many female characters. It's like, but we're going to make the whole movie feel soft and gentle, even though it's a violent crime movie. We're going to make the opening credits font cursive and pink, and we're going to have all these like quote unquote girly songs or whatever, so that it like hits less hard, or it's like less painful, the violence in this story. And I don't even know if it's like feminine so much as just like rounding off the edges of this very sharp, dark story in a really interesting, nice way that, again, I've never seen before. But I don't really think I would classify this as a feminine movie, but it's like it's secure in its masculinity. It's like a real men wear pink sort of situation is what I get from it. We don't have to be super hard, to be extremely strong and powerful and to handle our shit. And I've never seen anything like it. I like it, but I just got like, my brain just froze when you said this movie's very feminine, and I had to just chew on that, and I barely heard anything else you said.
Oh, well,
I'm sorry.
Well, I said exactly exactly the director, his goal was to make it feel feminine. And I think that was like, even like how you're saying, it's like, this is like when he first got the script, it had Hugh Jackman. It was a Hugh Jackman movie at Universal.
God, I
and
would
they
have
wanted
died.
to make a Fast and Furious type movie. And then Ryan Gosling got it, and he was like, well, I want something different. And the director was like, let's make it like more like let's make it anti Fast and Furious. Like, let's make it anti action film. So I guess that's what he was aiming for, was to like have this typically masculine, like bro-y character into the soft spoken, you know, likes pop music when he drives around kind of character. So I guess that's what he was aiming for. But yeah, like I totally agree. It is not a feminine film at all. Like I don't know. I don't think a man can make anything feminine in reality. But then I also do think like men can have feminine attributes. And I think this movie is like a masculine femininity in a way. Like if those can even be simultaneously happening because of this like vibe and spirit of it.
Yeah, he's like a man who is caring and empathetic,
but
and
also a
can
psycho.
kind of put himself aside. Yeah, and also kind of dead inside in a creepy way.
It's kind of about both. It's like the dichotomy of masculinity, I feel like.
Oh, I was just gonna add, like in our society and in a lot of films, like you have to be one or the other. He talks a lot about like how Tarantino is like hyper masculine in all his movies. So and like this is like kind of like a counter statement to that. Like if Tarantino would have directed this, it would have been all the most popular songs from the 80s that would talk about, you know, doing whatever, and they would be like riling up moments, where this is instead like very meditative and like processing emotions, which men are not good at. So that's what I think.
I just love my favorite quote that I found was where he calls the main character hopelessly romantic knight, but also completely psychotic and is willing to use any kind of violence to protect innocence. So I thought that was super interesting that he had that. He thought a lot about the character and like the duality of the main character, which is just beautifully summed up in the elevator.
Yeah, I love how they don't offer any back. I love it when a movie is brave enough to do that, where it's like, no, you're just going to be dropped into this character's life and you just have to fill in the blanks and figure him out yourself. And
it's also like,
I don't know if
it's also kind of like paying homage, I feel like, to sort of the Clint Eastwood character, like the man with no name, cowboy, also kind of like noir character that just you don't know where he came from. He comes into town, he wants to do good, do justice, but he's also violent. That kind of character. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's cool that it's like it's tapping into that legacy.
That character as a modern day getaway driver. That's clever. I like it. I like the premise. Yeah, like if I saw the script, I'd be like, this is going to be a good, interesting movie. And lo and behold, it was.
Well, I guess one thing we got to talk about is the performances, because I found them very spectacular. I mean, I had forgotten like so many amazing people were in this movie that it's almost like it's one of those movies, like kind of like Scott Pilgrim. Like you go watch it and you're like, oh, all these people, you know, have Oscars and are in the biggest movies now. And I felt that a lot, like specifically with like Oscar Isaac. Like he is a complete scene stealer for me. Like his performance in this film is just like spectacular and really like grounds the, you know, the sabotage element of this film. And Ryan Gosling, Carey Mulligan, even like Cranston. I love Albert Brooks in his role, Ron Perlman, and even like the small little cameo-esque kind of performance from Christina Hendricks I found all spectacular. What did y'all think about the performances?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I was having oh my gosh, this person's in this movie over and over the whole movie. And I was especially so happy to see Christina Hendricks. I love her. I watched every season and every episode of Mad Men. I love her. But yeah, this like has every hot person from that era. Like this is like why all hipsters and, you know, film nerds are in love with all these people, except for the old ones. But even like people have this weird regard for Ron Perlman, and I'm like, but he played like a motorcycle man in that TV show, and they're like, no, Ron Perlman is a hero, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, I don't know. Is this the text that made everyone love all these actors? Is this what put them in the respect column forever? And it kind of felt that way. Like every second the camera was on any one person, it was like, wow, look at them go. What a great actor. And yeah, Oscar Isaac did stand out to me because I had really just seen him in like Inside Llewyn Davis and Star Wars.
Like this was like one of his first I think if not like his first like major role in like an LA film.
Yeah, and
from
it
my
really
research.
startled me when he was in Ex Machina
Mm-hmm.
because he was so menacing in that movie. And he's so hapless in Llewyn Davis and so sweet in Star Wars that I was like, where is he getting this like scariness in Ex Machina? And then in this, I could kind of see the beginnings of that, where he's like kind of doing all of the above at the same time. And I'm like, okay, here's all his layers in a small, relatively small character. Wow. Like, it was just very impressive. But yeah, Albert Brooks. Oh, guys. Albert Brooks is like from my childhood. He's like my weird uncle. I grew up with Albert Brooks movies. Defending Your Life, Mother, The Muse. I just watched Network News, and he's such a whiny little Seinfeld-esque, neurotic, doofus in all of his movies. And so this whole movie, I just couldn't believe that he was a mob boss. I was just like, Albert, go sit down. Go home.
What?
Like, I did not, because I'm so, like, I've seen his movies so many times. Like, I just grew up with his comedies. They're such a part of my childhood that I was just like, he's not. That was the only performance that I was like, oh, sweet Albert. No, no, no. And is this, I don't know. I'm just so used to him. I'm just so used to him being kind of the pathetic, neurotic, comedic relief that I just couldn't buy him. I was never threatened by him. My suspension of disbelief just fell apart. But that's the only flaw, I guess, because I'm just such a fan of his other work.
I think it just
Interesting.
creates such a cool effect because, like, he is, and all the characters in this movie have a level of that you feel sorry for them, and they have a explanation for why they're doing what they're doing. And so, yeah, I think that kind of played into his character, where I was like, oh man, he feels bad about what he's doing. It just kind of makes sense to his character. Especially there's that scene or very brief like moment that didn't need to be in the movie where we just see him going back to his apartment after doing something violent and just sitting down and just kind of like looking like he's feeling like shit. And I love that. It's cool. It adds depth to his character. If it'd been like a stereotypical, just kind of like, gangster kind of actor, it just would have been like a stereotype, but it was cool.
I don't know.
Both him and Ron Perlman, because Ron Perlman's kind of a weird one too. Like he doesn't come across as that threatening to me.
Oh
but
my gosh, he's got such a scary face, though.
yeah, I suppose, but I don't know. He just, but then it kind of makes that part of his character where he's just kind of a pathetic like underling.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. So I just thought that was cool how they picked people that, their face kind of, and Ryan Gosling, like, before this, he was just known for the romantic kind of movies.
Yeah.
And so you look at him and you just see that kind of person. And the beginning of the movie kind of just shows you that kind of person. And then as the movie goes on, you see the psycho, whatever you want to call it, violent side of him. And you're like, whoa, like wasn't expecting this. But it's cool. All the characters are like that.
Yeah, I guess if it had been any other comedy actor that they were getting, like, Robin Williams, like there's so many comedy actors that can do a dramatic role and it's like startling and amazing and it has that exact effect of like, I didn't expect this from you and now I'm more scared of you because it's so surprising. But for me, it just word up felt like seeing Jerry Seinfeld play a mobster and I just couldn't go there in my brain.
But yeah, so do y'all have any other technical things before we give our ratings?
No, I mean, besides the main thing that people made fun of this movie of, which is like the dialogue scenes that are very minimal and something that I really, really love about this movie. But I know that was kind of like a thing that a lot of people didn't like about this movie, which I thought was interesting.
It drives people insane. Like I talked about like when I first watched this movie, I watched it with my sister and her at that time husband, and like they walked out because it bothered them so much. And there was other people that walked out of the theater like because it bothered them so, like they thought these characters are just like handicapped in some sort of way. Like they cannot communicate. Like they're mute characters. Like I don't know. Every time I show this to someone and I think they're gonna like it, they go insane. They're like, why isn't he saying anything? Why isn't he saying anything? And I think it's just like people have just become increasingly more and more ADD or ADHD or like impatient with slow kind of films or like anything that doesn't give them a huge monologue, because I guess that's what like TV is kind of based on nowadays. But I love this. Like I loved it so much.
The Quiet Witness just, yeah, it felt more real to me, more natural. Like sometimes you just don't know what to say. And sometimes it feels really good to just sit quietly in a room with someone and just kind of watch TV, just kind of ride in a car silently and vibe. Like it just let the characters breathe to me. And I was also like, this is where the Lars performance came from. I was seeing Lars from Lars and the Real Girl murdering people a little bit watching this, but it was like kind of nice. It was like, yeah, this sweethearted person just has a bad situation he's got to take care of. Like, Gosling is so uniquely good at this, like, silent but so emotive character. And I guess I was super ready for that from him because of Lars. Yeah, it just felt good. It just seemed right. It didn't bother me at all. I would have been annoyed if it was a super talky movie.
It's super romantic, like in a way that you don't see in a lot of movies. Because it makes it way more effective to me and realistic. Yeah, that they actually have feelings for each other, that they could just sit in silence.
So what would you rate this out of 10, David?
It's a 10 out of 10 for me because it's just one of my personal favorites. On top of it being excellent technically, so yeah, it's one of my 10 out of 10s.
And what would you rate it out of 10, Helen?
Oh goodness, I've been talking very positively about it, and I do love it in a lot of ways. But I think I have to give it a 7 because crime is just not my genre, and anytime the like minutia of the crime situation and the hierarchy and everybody's motivation, it's like football rules. My brain just switches off. I just can't absorb it. Like so I was kind of bored by that aspect of the movie. I was like, yeah, and people are like owe each other money or something. And like I never can connect fully with a crime genre movie. But for that kind of movie, this was like peak beautiful and as close to something I would like as that genre can really get. But I still can't like give it a super high rating because I just like there's a key component of this story and this plot and this whole work that just went in one ear and out the other. And I kind of zoned out for all those parts. Yeah, I keep like adding crime movies to my watch list on Letterboxd and then going back and like sorting it by crime because you can sort stuff by genre and deleting them all again because I'm like, I know I'm not going to enjoy this. Like I know De Palma's a great filmmaker, but I just don't think I can get through 144 minutes of Carlito's Way. I just don't think I'm going to have a good time. Like, so I just go back and back and forth with the crime genre where they're like, these are all the pinnacle movies in so many ways for like filmmakers. And then I sit down to watch them and there's just a fundamental like intellectual and emotional disconnect that I have. So while I think this movie is technically beautiful and I enjoyed it, I don't think it's going to go in like a personal canon for me. So a 7.
Yeah, that is like interesting you bring up the crime element because that for me is like the element of the movie doesn't really care about because it's always kind of like it is like the driving force, but it's almost always tossed to the side because seemingly the main character does not care about it. We'll get to that in the spoilers. But for me, it is a 10 out of 10. Still, I love it. I still think it's a masterpiece of cinema. Oh my God. Like it still makes me feel things. I mean, there's like so many key moments where like it was like flashbacks back to the first time I watched it and it hit just as hard as it did that first time. We talked about a lot of the elements, but one thing I really want to say is like the cinematography. It is absolutely stunning. I do think it would look better on film, but
oh my God, I knew you were going to say that.
Because you know what I was thinking? Like, because I was like, man, what is like the film equivalent? So I can like bring this up to David and we could do side by side. And it's Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is this movie. Like when he's driving, some of the shots are exactly the same. There's like a 1-to-1 shot of him eating a pie. But I'm not docking any points for it. I still think it's a beautiful film, the way it plays with light and shadow. The colors, the director is famously colorblind. So like all the colors in this film are like heightened to the level so he can actually see them. And I find that so beautiful and like such a nice aesthetic that like no one has copied or tried to copy, which is interesting as well. And the sound design I found very stunning this time because I forgot that how quiet this movie is because again, like the Taxi Driver comparison, like Taxi Driver is a very loud movie because it's in New York and LA is a loud place. And if you were to go back and rewatch this movie, every scene is like almost dead quiet. Like there's barely any sound besides key moments during like a chase sequence moments or something else, but there's even moments where characters are outside and it's dead quiet and they're just staring at each other, and you just have the score fueling the emotion. And I thought that was like such an interesting choice that I've never noticed before, and it leads into this like weird meditative feel that the film has. Like it's almost more of an art house kind of movie that's like begrudgingly has this normal action movie plot. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the score. I thought was awesome. The soundtrack is awesome. So like all these things to me still culminate to like just a masterful piece of work from the director and everyone that was involved in the making of this. Before we get into spoilers, I was going to ask, who do you think you'd recommend this to? Since it is kind of like a weirdly like common audience, people don't like this movie, but then critics do. Like, who do you think would like this movie, or what other movies would you comp this for?
Anyone, I guess, who hasn't seen it likes noir as a genre would like it, and like Helen was kind of pointing out, like any fan of crime movies in general, kind of seedy crime movies, or it has also just weird genre like Western kind of. It has a sort of a Western sort of feel, or also super like I got Batman vibes from his character a lot. Like it's got that feeling of I've never thought of that until this viewing, but he is very very much Batman. So yeah, like seedy Scorsese fans or like that would like it. Seedy crime movies and mysterious heroes or anti-heroes.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's going to conclude our review portion of Drive. If you don't want to be spoiled, you can pause the podcast now. And while you do that, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, or comment on what you thought about the film or our takes on it. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or email us at cineverm@yahoo.com. And you can visit our website, cineverm.com, for our canon list and written reviews. And also check out my YouTube channel, Lonely Critic. You can also check out my other video game news podcast, Headset Chat. And if you're a reader of books, check out my book club podcast, Read, Drink, Talk. And if you're into Let's Plays, check out my gaming channel, A Lonely Gamer. And lastly, check out Movies for Decades podcast, where Helen and her brothers Colin and John discuss films through the decades. But now, let us enter the spoiler section.
I have like a general thing, just the direct. Have y'all seen any of the other Nicholas Winding Refn movies? Because I just feel
only one.
Like it's which one?
So after this movie, obviously it had a huge impact. He made a movie rather quickly after this with Ryan Gosling called Only God Forgives. I saw that opening day, and that was probably the worst cinematic experience I've had in my life. Like that movie is just atrociously bad.
Yeah.
Probably like one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. It is absolutely beautiful, but it is like there's no substance to it. So that's the only one I watched. But I am very intrigued, and I really want to watch Bronson with Tom Hardy is the one that's on my... Have you seen any other ones?
Yeah, the Neon Demon, and then I watched his show. No, I did not like. I haven't liked. That's the weird thing. The thing I wanted to bring up is like I don't like none of his other movies or projects have gotten even close to the level of Drive, and I just think that's so weird. He's one of those people that this was just maybe just a flash in the bucket or flash in the pan. What do they call that?
Yeah, flash in the pan.
And it's just like it didn't have to do with him. Or after this became popular, he took all the wrong lessons for it, and he thought people like Drive because of the ultra violence or because of the neon aesthetic or something like that. When my thing is that none of his other projects have had like the humanity or like the warmth at the core of it that this movie does. And I just like he didn't get that's what people liked about this movie, and I just find that really weird. It's just one of those
What
weird,
is his show?
weird filmmakers. It's like it's got a really convoluted name.
Too Old to Die Young.
Yeah. Too Old to Die Young. It's a very drawn out. People have compared it to the Twin Peaks: The Return, because it's almost like he watched Twin Peaks: The Return and just thought, oh, I want to make like a super slow, needlessly slow in a bad way, just drawn out. Basically,
instead of
like a
I
movie.
am terrified of when David Lynch's imagination is going to jump out and slap me. Like even staring at this concrete is making me nervous, which is how Twin Peaks: The Return feels. So yeah,
he doesn't capture any of the magic. It's just a movie that could have been 2 hours, and he stretched it out to like 8 or 9 hours or whatever.
No.
It's a real shame, because watching it, I remember thinking, God, like if this had been a movie that was 2 hours or less, it might have been close to as good as Drive, because it has like a solid central. God, the cinematography is beautiful. The soundtrack is great. the acting is good, the plot is and the characters are interesting, kind of, but it's just like drawn out so long and so much is wasted. So yeah, man, I hope that he comes back around. But then I saw that his next movie that he's coming out with is called Maniac Cop, and so that doesn't give me any good feelings that he's coming back around. But
I think films are like often credited to like the director, like, oh, it's the director, he's amazing, but it's like honestly like an amalgamation of the crew and the people involved in the movie. So like Ryan Gosling was like instrumental in this movie to the point that I didn't even realize like the whole his whole like aesthetic.
Following his projects that he's chosen after this, it totally tracks.
Yeah.
Like
his whole outfit in this movie was chosen by Ryan Gosling, and like a lot of the development, like supposedly the script had a lot of dialogue, and it was Gosling and Carey Mulligan who were like, no, we should just cut all this out and like let us just like stare at each other and like let us be weird and let us like do all this stuff. And the director was like, all right, do whatever you want, because this was his first like Hollywood movie, so he was, you know, more open to other people's ideas, I feel like. And like even like Gosling's jacket, like the scorpion jacket, was Gosling's idea, and that is like such a huge component of the movie. Like there's even a whole line of dialogue. I mean, even like the grand metaphor of the film is that jacket.
As
there's
a
just
Scorpio,
so many things.
I feel entitled to that jacket. I need one. Please, somebody.
And I mean, Ryan Gosling chose this director. Like they let him choose the director, which is crazy or interesting to me.
Yeah, let's just call it, this is Gosling's movie, and he's the auteur, and sometimes the actor's the auteur, and we need to start recognizing that, and follow Gosling's filmography, and I think you will see deep, sensitive, intense stories and characters all the way through. So interesting.
Yeah, he has a pretty, like, I wouldn't say a flawless career, but like he doesn't work unless he's interested in it. And even a bad Gosling movie, you're like, I understand exactly why he picked this. Like, it makes sense.
Sometimes you need money. You know, it happens.
So I think that's the core. And then also, this is based on a book, which I think gave him, like, narratively a good enough structure. Like, this structure is your typical, you know, action, bad luck, heist movie. But like you need a good structure to tell something emotional. And like I haven't seen the Neon Demon or his other works, but I know everything after this he wrote exclusively by himself.
Makes sense.
Where in this film he had a writer, Amani, wrote the entire screenplay for this and like collabed with him. So I think it was just he maybe like you were saying, maybe this got to his head a little bit and he just decided to push others away because he's like, I'm the director, I'm the art form. But what's interesting is most directors, they have a hit and then they bring everyone back. You know, it's like, let's just all make movies together forever. And then it works out.
Oh, he's like M. Night Shyamalan. He just needs a good writer. I remember we talked about that on the old episode. It's just like, God, he just needs to get someone else to write all of his movies.
I think most directors are secretly like wannabe cinematographers, if I can say that so boldly. Like, I think, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just think they take.
So does that mean Soderbergh's the best because he's both?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't try to hide behind that.
Someone else's camera. Yeah.
I think what I mean is like, there's a lot of directors who like think they're really good writers, but in reality, they're just really good visualists. Like, I think Zack Snyder, I think Michael Bay, I mean, even M. Night Shyamalan to an extent. Like, I think a lot of directors would have a lot of benefit if they had someone to keep them in check, like a actual writer who's only concerned with the narrative. Because I think directors just get way too absorbed and obsessed with like the visual ideas to where they lose everything else. And I think Refn is like one of those people. And even like Neil Blomkamp, who did District 9, I feel like he's in this exact same wheelhouse that like he had an explosive career and then like, where is he? He hasn't been around in like 5-6 years. So I guess for the spoiler, we got to talk about the introduction sequence because that held up so beautifully to me. I wanted to hear y'all's opinion. Like, what did y'all think about that initial car chase sequence? I mean, most of it takes place inside the car, which I thought was like a beautiful choice and aesthetic. I mean, we're introduced to Gosling's character and his eyes and his like monotone perfection for everything. I mean, the idea of like having the baseball game and helicopter and all that kind of stuff. Like, what did y'all think about that whole sequence? And did it play for you well?
I was mad at myself that I saw Baby Driver before this because I was comparing it to Baby Driver and just being angry at myself for doing that. Because that movie is just fluff and just fun. It's like the cartoon version of this movie. And I was like, here's the part in the Getaway Driver movie that where we show what a good driver he is. And I was like, man, if I hadn't seen Baby Driver before, then I would think this was amazing. But because I have, I'm just like, and this is a Getaway Driver movie, so this is what you do in the beginning of a Getaway Driver movie. But I was still struck by the beauty of it and the way, the looking over the dashboard, the looking up at Gosling's face from the floor, like just how pretty everything was. And, a thing about me is like opening credits is one of my things. A movie gets bumped up in my esteem immediately if it has opening credits. I don't really think it's a good movie without opening credits. I can't explain it. It just feels like a proper movie if I know the names of the people ahead of time. I don't know. And so when those opening credits hit and it was that beautiful like pink font and I was just like, all right, this is a good movie. I don't care what happens after this. This is a good movie. Because it was just so artful. Mm-hmm. But I was mad at myself that I caught myself comparing it to Baby Driver over and over and over again, which is stupid. Oh, well.
No, I just love the opening credits, like how it, like you said, it's very artful. And I notice every time that the credits are like synced with the music, they're like, I love when it's such a silly gimmick, but I love when that happens in movies. So like they're appearing and disappearing with the music. Yeah. And then also his Ryan Gosling, like the editing synced with the music, and Ryan Gosling, I always notice when he goes into his apartment and then leaves and he flicks off the light in time with the music and then like closes the door in time with the music. I love that. Speaking of Baby Driver, just took that to the extreme, but not in a good way. It's kind of like a diluted version of this. I don't know, or just went too far.
Yeah, that's so interesting you brought up the Baby Driver thing, because I was thinking about Baby Driver watching this movie as well. I mean, I haven't rewatched Baby Driver, but even that first watch, I think I gave it like a 6 out of 10, and I think that was like the beginning of Edgar Wright's downfall in a lot of ways. And just thinking back, I was like, I don't think I want to watch Baby Driver again because I would fucking hate it. Like I was remembering almost like the inverse of you, where I was hating all the things that Baby Driver did that this was doing differently and better. And it was like, oh, every song here is about an emotion, and Baby Driver is like, it's cool, and it's like
it's
everything's too sing. Yeah, and it's like, and then also Ansel Elgort is just like, I don't know, just I think of him and my blood pressure gets out of control and I just get angry. But yeah, I love like how David was saying, like how everything's synced, and there's so many like little like not East and this is interesting because like we've been watching a lot of films, at least me and David have, that, or even with you, Helen, like with Nope and other films where there's like Easter egg heavy kind of movies, and I'm so happy and like relieved and like I took so many deep breaths of this movie not having all these like damn Easter eggs of everything about the movie, and the Easter eggs that are present are all emotional like thematic tie-ins. Like in that introduction, we see Carey Mulligan and them in the elevator in the same exact shot that happens post elevator scene later on. And like the way they look, the way they cross paths, the way the framing, it's like a literally exact copy replica of what happens later in the movie, all in this like little music video montage. And that leads me to like my absolute favorite thing about this movie is the framing and the composition. Like I think this is just like a masterclass, world-class, like fucking testament to how to frame a scene. Like there's the director uses like a quadrant system. So like top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. Like he keeps characters in certain quadrants.
Yeah.
And it like the
Have you seen the YouTube channel Every Frame of Painting? Yeah, they use this movie to explain that technique. And that's part of why I wanted to see this movie, because I was like, okay, this movie's going to teach me about cinematography just by osmosis. And I feel kind of like I know more about cinematography now after seeing this movie, because I was just innately noticing the shot and being like, I am seeing everything that is relevant in this frame, and I'm getting exactly what I need from every image. And that just feels so nice. Like some movies are either too busy or unnecessary or just like gaudy or chaotic. And this movie is so clear. It's just so vivid. Definitely.
And my favorite thing, I'm pretty sure they probably bring it up in the Every Frame of Painting video, but one thing I noticed this time is every time we see Oscar Isaac's character and Ryan Gosling, when they're together or even not together, like that first time Ryan Gosling enters Carey Mulligan's house, there's a mirror. And in the reflection, the bottom right is a picture of Standard. So they're in the same actual frame when they're being cut back and forth. And that happens like throughout the entire film while he's still alive. I guess we got to talk about like the big scene because I'm curious how this played for you, Helen. And then also you, David, because I know you're a fan of violence. Like, what did y'all think about the violence in this movie?
Known fan of violence here.
You're a violent guy, David. What?
Yeah. I mean, listen back to our Fear Street trilogy of episodes, and you will hear David rave about violence.
Yeah, for sure. I do like me some nice, bloody, wonderful violence in movies.
I just want to say this is what I aspire to have violence in my film. Like it's violent and it's disgusting, but it feels gross and disgusting in the movie. Like the movie is not glorifying it. It's not showing it as this cool, like I'm a badass type thing. Like it feels gross and nasty. And you see other characters look at the elevator scene. Like Ryan Gosling looks like a fucking monster and Carey Mulligan's like, what the fuck, dude? And then leaves. And I love that. Like someone sees someone do something gross and they leave their life. You know, like that's what normal
it got
humans
undermined.
should do.
It got undermined by the fact that she went and knocked on his door later.
Yeah,
I really would have deleted that.
Mm-hmm.
That made me kind of mad at her because I was very impressed by and he kissed her because he knew that she's never going to want to look at me again after I do this. So this is my one chance. So I have to take it. And then he did that, and then he did the other thing, and she had a real human reaction where she's like, okay, you are now terrifying, and I'm never going to be aroused by you again after watching you crush a man's head. Like, the end. This is the end of us. And that was just so good, and so, I've never seen that in a movie before. And then the fact that she went and knocked on his door later made me so mad. I was like, she wouldn't do that. Erase this little moment, please. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that is almost one of the only moments that I would remove from the movie is when she knocks on his door because it is kind of pathetic. It's and also it also made me think this time around he didn't really do anything for them for her or the kid.
Yeah, he didn't give her the money even.
They didn't get any money, which okay.
He
I
asked
thought about
her
that.
if she wanted the money though.
Yeah,
and she said, she slapped him and said no.
I think I would have left the money with them anyway. Just in case,
well, but then they would have been a target.
Yeah, that's what I thought about too. Is that wouldn't have. He did the right thing because he just wanted it to be over and knew that if the gangsters found all the money, they would not be looking anymore. So, or for her at least.
What did you think about the violence in general, David? Like, do you like the violence how it was showed in this film? Do you think it's good? What are your thoughts?
I think the main thing I like is just how each of the violent scenes with Ryan Gosling at least just shows that weird side of that character that you don't really see, and just all of a sudden you just see it, and all of a sudden he turns into a monster, and it's really weird. Just the way
he's like a werewolf.
Yeah,
that is actually the director said I think of Ryan Gosling in this movie as a werewolf or a superhero.
Oh my God.
It depends on the mood of my day.
Wow. I see that.
Just the image that sticks in my head is the motel scene when the blood is all over his face and he's looking around the corner.
In his mouth.
Yeah, and just the expression, the lighting makes his face look really waxy and weird, and the expression on his face, and also something not intentional, but something about Ryan Gosling's eyes. He has a slight, he has a slight lazy eye in one of his eyes, and you can see it in certain shots. And for some reason in that shot, it's really accentuated. And the combination of all of those details just makes that shot really chilling. And you're just oh my God, this guy's a monster, secretly, or is he? I don't know.
Killed before. You don't kill someone that efficiently and calmly when you have never done it before.
Oh yeah.
That's absolutely how that scene in the hotel made me feel. Because at first I was scared. I was like, "This is it. This is they're dead. How is this movie going to progress? Oh no!" And then it was "Oh, wait a minute. No, Ryan Gosling can handle it. He's done this before." Oh damn.
Oh, and then just him. I mean, just jumping around the scenes, but the one where he
Yeah.
is wearing the mask and he kills Nino, like that's just straight up horror. Like that entire
Yeah.
scene, just
Yeah.
him coming down. That's just like Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Well, since we kind of like covered a lot of the elevator, I just want to say about that elevator scene. That's like probably one of the best scenes in all cinema for me. Like that's like capital C cinema is
Yeah.
the three characters in an elevator, and you as the audience know what's going to happen, and it's going to be bad. And then you see him take this moment, like Helen said, like this is going to be the only time he ever gets to like kiss this woman that he's like absolutely in love with. And then I just love how like it's all slow motion, and he like turns around, the lighting in the elevator starts to dim, and then they just have a spotlight, and it's so it's like so perfect and genius, and like it almost makes it
super
feel like
romantic.
yeah, and I've heard some interpretations like that didn't happen, and that's why the lights like
Mhm.
dimmed. But in my feeling or in my perspective, like it just feels like that's what the characters felt. Like they felt like everything went dark, and they just
Yeah.
had each other and their lips and their eyes and them touching each other, and like I think that is like my favorite cinema kiss of all time. Like it's just
It's a good
so
candidate.
sweet. Yeah, it's so sweet, and it's like slow when they stare at each other and then they kiss again. I'm like, damn, like that's so.
Yeah, I mean, that's
badass.
also a testament
That's
to how
hot.
great those two actors are. Like, Carrie Mulligan,
Yeah.
I hadn't really seen her in a lot of things, but like every hipster boy I have ever spoken to, she's been like their number one. And I'm like, why?
She's super attractive in this movie for some reason. I don't
Yeah,
know what
and
it
it
is about
must
this
be
movie.
this movie is what did it, because she's in mostly like, you know, Victorian novel adaptations on the BBC. Like that's like her big like, and like very depressing artistic weird movies like are her normal choices. And so I was like, she's not
Yeah.
in anything like super big. Like what is this extreme allure that like all the men in my life have for her? And it's this movie. It's definitely this movie.
Yeah.
And I get it. Honestly, I get it. Because she
Yeah,
is
and
beautiful
she's-
and she is a shockingly great actress. Like she says everything with her face. I know exactly what's going on in her like heart and mind every time the camera's on her. Like I get it. I get it.
She just radiates like she's a good person in this movie with her face, like you said.
Yeah.
Just in every scene, all the silent scenes between them, she's just like
And she's such a good
radiating.
mom.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
have strong mom radar, and I lose respect for characters when they're bad moms, and she was a really
Oh,
good
yeah.
mom. And not in like a heavy-handed like look at this woman being maternal, but just in a like
Yeah.
she just thinks it's fun to sit in the floor and play with her kid. Like she has a real genuine smile on her face. Like that's just really nice. Like
And there's one scene that makes me think about it is like she's always seen like with her kid like doing activities and stuff. Like there's that one scene where Ryan Gosling's like looking out the window, which is kind of creepy-ish now that I think about it. But she's like walking at the park with her kid, and they're just like walking along, having a great time. And yeah, like the energy or like the relationship that she has with her son. It's very calm and like contained and quiet. Like even the kid, like he sees his father beat up, and the kid is not, reacting in a way a kid probably should, because
I mean, the
I
kid
feel
was
like the kid
definitely
knows.
in shock.
Yeah, but it's not like he, because the father's been in prison for so long. But it's like
Yeah.
he knows he's safe with his mom no matter what.
Yeah,
Like I don't know. I
yeah.
just get that energy like. The kid knows he has his mom no matter what happens. In a lot of movies where it's this situation, single mom, it's like the mom is portrayed as like manic or like insecure or like also like a toxic entity. But in this movie,
Yeah,
she's like
yeah.
completely like just a good mom, like a good person.
Yeah, the kid
And
is well adjusted. He seems like he doesn't have any attachment issues. And like she was 18 when she had him, and she's still like I've known people that have been teen moms that are excellent moms like that. And I mean, it doesn't
technically-
matter how old
yeah,
you are.
yeah, 18. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's just like sometimes you just step up to the challenge and sometimes you don't, and it's not anybody's fault really. Like I'm not here to like hate on bad teen moms. Like that's a fucked up situation to be in. But yeah, it's just she's just you can tell she just likes to hang out with her kid. And if you are a single mom, yeah, you have to take your kid everywhere, grocery store, to repair your car, to the park, everywhere literally everywhere you go. So you would be kind of buddies. And they definitely have that like we're besties vibe. And it's so nice.
Oh my God, talking about that, because I love that element. Again, this is like the more I learned about this movie, the more I realized like a lot of these actors had control. Like Oscar Isaac Isaac's character in the original book is just like a complete shitbag dad.
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, Oscar Isaac was like, well, what if I make him like he wants to like have redemption and he's actually a good dad and like he's not really a bad person, he just has bad luck and like all this kind of stuff. And like
Yeah.
he fused that into the narrative and I felt that like in a lot of ways
Yeah.
this like character gave me like hardcore vibes of like my brother. Like this guy acts like my brother, like to a T. It's kind of scary. But like I love like the backstory that he gave it to where like you always feel conflicted by his character and like a lot of characters in this movie where even like you were saying with Albert Brooks' character, like they never feel like they want to do these things. It just feels like everyone made the wrong choice. And they're all
Yeah.
just spiraling into this like, fuck, now I gotta kill you and you're gonna kill me and then you're gonna kill this guy and then that person's gonna die and like, why are we doing this? This is all stupid. And like I feel that from like Oscar Isaac's character where he is just like just so like he obviously did the initial dumb thing and that has set this whole thing into collapse and he's not brave enough to like end it by himself, like remove himself from his family so they can just kill him because obviously that's all they want to do. But yeah, I just love the dichotomy of that and like him actually like obviously like really loving his kid and like I don't know, it's just like an interesting complex character thing that I really vibed with this time in the movie.
And it's also risky, I feel like, because well, I had forgotten how they portrayed Oscar Isaac. So I was like, I don't know what I was expecting or what I remembered, but I was pleasantly surprised. Like you said, the first scene at the party, like how it portrays him as very like, oh, he's just like a good person that got caught up in, you know, something bad. He made a bad decision and that's it. And he's like trying to correct his life, but whatever he can't. But then it's kind of weird if you think about it, because then Ryan Gosling is supposed to be the good guy. And so when they have that conversation and like he's being like, I feel like Standard is in the right, you know, like being very protective
Yeah.
of his family and like, who is this random guy that's been talking to my wife and like hanging out with my kid? And it kind of
Yeah.
makes him seem weird. Like,
Yeah.
why, yeah, like he should back off now, but
Yeah.
he doesn't. But then the movie, kind of like a fairy tale, quickly like eliminates Standard from the picture so that Ryan Gosling can continue his fantasy
journey.
of having this
Yeah.
family or whatever, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like fairy tale logic.
The thing I was gonna say, the element that I loved, because this happens with every culture, but just my experience, me in high school, like a lot of Latina women and Latino people would get pregnant at like 16, 17, and like that's just a normal thing in a lot of Latino people and like culture. And I love how in this film, you know, you have that awesome, you know, like that introduction to Oscar Isaac, and he's talking about like, you remember how we met, and like I introduced myself, my name is Standard, and then like just the cutest, like awesomest little backstory, like she's like, where's the deluxe? And it's just like perfect line reading, perfect performance. Even like Gosling laughs when he's totally uncomfortable and unhappy in this situation. But then I love how that scene or that dialogue ends with her saying, well, he's like, oh yeah, she was 18. And she's like, no, I was 17. And it's like,
Yeah.
because he's like portrayed as being way older than her. Like in my mind, I see him as very like 5-6 years older than her. So like,
Yeah.
it's not like a 19-year-old going out with a 17-year-old. Like I imagined a 25-year-old
Yeah.
going out with a 7, and then he got her pregnant seemingly within a year and had a baby at 18. And like that is
Yeah.
like technically, you know,
Pretty
like that's-
realistic.
yeah, that's bad and it's messy and it's
Yeah.
like gray and like so it's cool. Like every time I thought, okay, he's a good guy, they immediately gave me something to like dislike him about. And like his
Yeah.
energy, like you were saying, David, like he does have a right to be defensive, but then he's like hyper masculine about it and like almost like toxic. Like he's always asking Ryan Gosling, like, well, what are you doing? And like, just like, there's like this under the surface, like, if you don't back off, I'm gonna like hurt you kind of vibe that he gives off every time they like meet or talk, or like just the way Oscar Isaac looks at him is like, I don't like you and like get away from my family.
But why would he? I mean, I
Reasonable.
don't know. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
reasonable.
I
Yeah.
think that all, yeah, it all makes sense. And
Yeah.
I don't know, was it just me that backstory kind of made me think it wasn't really that adorable to me? It was kind of like creepy and like kind of sad or something. I don't know.
No,
Like
what really
it made me
stood out.
think less of Irene for some reason. I don't know why.
No. What really stood out to me in that scene was how she kept looking at Ryan Gosling like she really wanted him to think that story was funny, and she wanted him to
Yeah.
think her little comeback was cute. She didn't care that like she wasn't flirting. She was like using the time she flirted with the man she had a kid with to flirt with the new guy now. Like she was like, see, look, I'm funny though. I'm so glad you're getting to hear this story so that you can get a sense of how funny I am. Like she wanted reassurance from him. And that was so interesting that she's like, it's sort of this double, we're reminiscing with my current dude about our relationship, but I'm also kind of using it to like seem more attractive to other dude. It was like a really intense love triangle scene
Yeah.
in like the pantheon of great love triangle moments. That was like it.
And
Yeah.
I noticed this time, like the moment where, like during his party, and she's out in the hall, and she makes the little joke about, like, he's like, "Do you want me to call the police?" Like he's like joking. She's like, "I wish you would." And I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she does not like Standard. She's not that
Yeah,
happy
well,
that
I
he's
mean,
back.
Yeah, I understand a little bit. Like, you get knocked up at 17 and you have to change your whole life, and then the guy you're with goes to jail. Like, I
Yeah.
would be resentful.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
he is trying, to be a good dad and trying to provide for you. And, like, on paper, he is a nice person. Like, I never got a vibe that he's, like, abusive to her. So it's like, I can see in her eyes, like, she's trying to, like, re-fall in love with Standard, but also she can't. Like, yeah, she's such a good actress. Wow. I just got so much from her performance.
There
That
should have almost
makes-
been a scene between her and Standard by themselves to like kind of
Yeah.
show us what their relationship is like. I just thought of that.
Yeah.
That would have
Yeah.
been a nice addition.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
we never
take
see
the
them
knocking
alone.
on the door scene and have a scene with her in Standard instead. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do love even that scene where she tells him my husband's coming back, and like she like out of the blue, like he's coming back next week or whatever time frame, but it felt like so immediate. And I loved this is like another thing, like this film like has just like perfect cues. Because they're driving together in the car, they're holding hands, or she's holding his hand over the gear shifter. As soon as she tells him, my husband's coming back, a red light floods the car, and then the car
Yeah.
stops.
Yep.
And it's like
Yep.
their little daydream trip of like, oh, like this can work, and we can just be together, and like we're neighbors, and this is awesome, and like you're obviously a really safe dude and chill, and like you're good around my kid, and like I don't feel safe with anyone around my kid, or I don't feel safe, period. And it's like, all that just stops when reality kicks back in. And it's like, oh, well, my husband's
Yeah.
coming back. And it's like it's just like a complicated situation because we don't know how long he's been in prison, but it's kind of implied it's like years. So it's
Yeah.
like, what was she supposed to do? Break up with him while he's in prison? And just like, like it's just a complicated
Happens all the
issue.
time, but yeah.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of like me and David recently watched The Shining. In that movie, I sympathize with the mother character in that film too, because I heard this in another podcast. But it's like sometimes people make the wrong choice on like who they're with, and maybe you don't realize it until 10 years later, and then it's like a really fucked up situation that you can't just like abort immediately. And this film had that kind of energy and vibe, and then like how she
Yeah.
performed it is like she's not selfish in any way, and that like she just wants the best thing for her kid and what's safest for him, and then that happens to be another complication. But yeah, I love that scene specifically in the car, and just like them riding together, even like that weird daydream fairy tale moment where they go to the edge of the like water channel
Yeah, that
to,
nasty
like,
water.
yeah, like
That's like the only
Yeah.
nature that they can go to. Yeah.
Such a dreamy scene, though. That's got that. What is
Yeah.
the song in that scene that it's got? It's got one of those really good songs.
I think it's
Like
like
Under Your
Is that
Spell
the
or
Chromatic
something.
song?
I think you're a real human being. You're a real
Oh,
hero.
right.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that
it.
one, that one, that one. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right.
And like this movie does montages right. Like it's very, for me, it's very tricky to do montages because I can be turned off. But in this movie, the montages felt like how I said earlier, like musical moments of expression. Like their glances and their stares and the kid being excited to just drive around because it seems like they're cooped up in their apartment all day. And it's like, oh, this guy can just drive us around everywhere and it's fun. And like, I don't know, it's just so awesome. Like when I first saw this movie, I was like, I want to be Ryan Gosling. Like I want his life. Like I want to be this guy who just has like a family and is happy. And then, just in there without all the violence.
Yeah.
and
But
murder.
it is. I mean, do you find it on rewatches like a bit creepy how quickly he kind of works his way into this family and like, or how quickly he just assumes that he's part of the family? I kind of found a little bit creepy on
I
this
don't
watch.
think I think it's vague how much time has passed and how long
maybe.
she's been his neighbor.
I just got the impression it was like like a few weeks or something. The first stuff, like before Standard comes back, like maybe a month
Yeah.
or something. Just felt like not much time at all.
I don't know. I just
it's
I
vague.
believe it because the way they stare at each other. Like if I stare at someone the way he stared at her, like it's done. Like, you know, like I'm there with you. Like it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if we wait a year or whatever. Like I'm all yours at that point.
Yeah, I feel like maybe because of the very beginning where they're in the elevator and she turns and looks back at him in the parking lot. I feel like they've been neighbors for a long time and they've been crushing on each other for a long time. And it's like
Yeah.
this movie is just the moment when they finally mutually got up the nerve to talk to each other. And
Yeah.
they crossed paths enough times to where they sort of feel like they can finally let themselves hang out. Because
Yeah.
it felt like
It's-
there was some pre-implied tension there from second one. I mean, and yeah, like if Ryan Gosling is your neighbor, you're glancing over at him. I'm sorry.
And it is
Yeah.
because the job that the movie starts with, that character meets him again at a like cafe diner where he's eating the pie. And I want to say
Yeah.
he says it's been a couple years since that initial intro movie job because he says the
Yeah.
other guy went to jail or something.
Wait, but is that the same guy from the intro? Are you sure?
I believe so. Like I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure, but I'm like
Okay.
60% sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like
I
the
had the
crime
weird-
minutia that I didn't pay attention to.
Yeah. Like I had the weird impression for some reason that at the beginning of this movie, Ryan Gosling was moving into that apartment, but I think I'm wrong. But for some reason, I just get that impression from like him because the first scene, it's like he's going into the room and like dropping a bag and then leave. I don't know, but I'm probably wrong.
Yeah. No, but his apartment's empty. The second time we see his apartment, all he has is that little engine part thing that he's tinkering with.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that doesn't own anything.
Minimalist.
Again.
Yeah,
I
so he
dream
could have lived
to
there
be
for
him.
years and he just doesn't own anything, you know? There are
Yeah.
people like that.
True. True.
I have to say about the violence, since you did ask that, and I never really answered it. Not as my favorite part of the movie. It was cool, the contrast between this kind of like strange romance and this gritty crime violence thing. Like I appreciate the back and forth and the contrast and the art of it, but I was kind of like, oh man, this is just a bro action movie now. Like I was enjoying
Really?
so much. Yeah, I was enjoying so much that it was this strange, moody thing. And like all I knew about this movie was it was kind of marketed as Fast and the Furious, and then it was a huge flop because it wasn't that. And so I was kind of expecting like an incredibly quiet, like this guy's just a getaway driver and that's just his job, but that's not really like that's the background. And the real story is just his weird life. And then when Oscar Isaac got shot, I was like, oh, okay, this is just a shoot 'em up now. Damn.
See,
This is just a
that's what
mobster movie now.
That's what I find so interesting because the violence in this film is shot so strangely compared to other violent films. Like that moment is shot so wide. Like we never get a close up of
Yeah.
him. We never see him. We never even see him actually get shot that final time. Like it cuts directly back to Ryan Gosling's expression. Even like the head stomping, we only get, I think I like timed it. It was like 4 seconds of the actual head being stomped on. And like it's interesting because a lot of people like that is their central complaint of this movie is the violence. And I was just like
wouldn't say
remembering
it's a complaint.
I was
It's
thinking
just
back
it
to like
wasn't-
Midsommar and like other films or mainly horror films and other
Yeah.
crime movies, like you were saying, like violence is so like pornographic in like a horrible way to me. Where this one felt not only did we see, you know, we always saw the character responding to what's happening, and then we see the finality of it, so like the actual death, and then we see the response to it, which is always discussed. Like David mentioned, like after the shotgun scene in the motel, like we linger on Ryan Gosling's shocked face for like 15 seconds as he backs away into a corner of the door frame and exits the frame. Like he literally
I like
exits the
that.
frame. Like
Yeah.
he wishes he could escape this and just blood-soaked face, and he just
Yeah.
leaves. He just leaves. And I just
Yeah.
think that is like the core of the violence of this movie is like, what did I do?
Nobody
it's
wants
almost
it to be
like shock.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also Christina Hendricks's reaction to Oscar Isaac getting shot is like the only truly like realistic to me reaction to violence in the whole movie, where she screams and like says what the fuck, and I'm like, yes girl, yes, that's how well I would be behaving, because like everybody else is like quietly shocked, but it makes sense for their characters, but
Which is
like
which is funny because she's the only one that knew that was going to happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it still is like super disturbing to watch someone killed in front of you. And she had a very like natural, holy shit reaction that I just really appreciated, because that would have been me too.
It's interesting because I found Gosling's performance in that just absolutely like perfect. Like he gets out. This is the only time in the movie where I see him panic. Like he gets out of the car, stands, and he almost looks like he's about to rush towards Isaac,
help
and then
him.
we see the final shot, and then it cuts back, and he doesn't know what to do. Like he almost like switches back and forth, and that's the only time we see him in this movie like hesitate. And it's just like, I don't know, I really like identify
Yeah.
with that because he doesn't want him to die, because that's
He's
the girl that's I forgot the boy's name, but that's his dad, and like he
Yeah.
like loves this person because that's this kid's dad.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I thought that was like kind of shocking that death meant so much to him. Like even the part where like
No, yeah.
later in the motel when he slaps that character, the female, it feels like he is just so absolutely like enraged that she
Yeah.
knew that he was gonna die, and it's like, and he even says it like, you killed a boy's dad. Like
Yeah.
that boy is gonna forever be traumatized now. And like that's what he can't like control, like his emotional rage with her.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. But yeah, no, that part of the movie was where I started to zone out really bad, because it was like, okay, now he's on like a John Wick style rampage where he has to like get revenge and like save the family, and you know, he has a bag of money now. In every crime movie, someone's carrying some bag of money or some jewels or some drugs, and he's got a car chase with the other mobsters, and it's like a very glitzy car chase. I was kind of like, this is in this movie. I was hoping the opening car chase was going to be it, and this was going to subvert even more. But then there was like, you know, that interstate thing where he's driving backwards and like all that stuff, and I was like, I'm not a Fast and the Furious fan, and I was kind of dozing off, and
Oh no!
I was glad when
that
it was
is-
over. Yeah. Like,
That is
and I'm
not
like
Fast
texting
and
my friend who
Furious.
used to do like racing, like he used to street race. And I'm like, you've seen Drive and you drive good. How is the movie Drive? Like, is it realistic? And he was like, the beginning where he chose an Impala because it was the plainest car. That's like what you do when you're going to do on the road hijinks. That was the best part of that movie. And I was like, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Like whenever it gets to be like standard action movie tropes, I start, and like standard crime boss movie tropes, I start to zone out, and the movie starts to lose me. And I was like, yeah, now he has to kill everybody. And here's all the parts where he kills everybody. Cool.
But
Cool.
that's,
Like, yeah.
it's weird that you bring that up because the whole character is saying he doesn't want to do that. So like the entire film is
But
the
I knew that
narrative
the
is
movie
pushing
was going to have
against
to
that.
do that. But I just knew that the movie was going to have to do that because that's how movies work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was
You
like,
gotta have a
"Here's the
plot.
yeah.
I mean, what else is gonna happen? I guess. So, I don't know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
the rest of the movie
So
was
like
gonna be.
first half of this movie is like 10 out of 10, or like whatever, however you divide up the pie. I don't know at what point in the movie Oscar Isaac dies, but it feels like a totally different movie after that, and a movie that I'm not a particularly big fan of after that moment.
So all you got from that is action, whatever stuff, but you didn't get like, because for me, like that's when the movie kicks into like bad luck, and they say it in the movie a lot, like you just stole from the wrong person, and it's like just a series of bad luck things. So to me, honestly, it feels more like a noir, because isn't that like kind of the
Yeah.
trope
Yeah, I
of
mean, yeah,
noir is like
noir.
the wrong person identified as the wrong thing, because it
Yeah,
doesn't at all feel like a crime movie, because a crime movie, there's a
Well, I kind of,
protagonist
when I say
inciting the
crime and noir, they're interchangeable kind of in my head. It's like, you know, a network of people doing bad things and someone's caught in the middle of it. And you have to follow the chain up the hierarchy to the top, or else the violence is going to continue. And yeah, and you're a vigilante. You've decided to be a vigilante in this situation, the Batman thing. So you have to cut this off at the root, or else it's just going to keep happening. And the people you're trying to protect are still going to be in danger. So I don't know. It just all felt very like and here's the bro movie part of the story. I'm sorry. That's, yeah.
I'm really trying to imagine it like an alternate version of this movie where none of that
Yeah, and
happens.
I really don't think you could change it. I mean, I guess it could have been interesting if like Oscar Isaac survived and he paid off the people, and now like this love triangle continues to escalate, and like Ryan and Oscar have to kill each other in the end somehow. Like that could have
Yeah.
been a weird, interesting story that I was kind of half hoping for. I wanted them to act at each other a lot more than
Oh,
they
it would have
ended
been
up doing.
good from an acting
Yeah.
perspective, man. That would have, if them two
Yeah.
had become the main focus.
It
Yeah.
comes like this psychological thriller of like this, I hate you, but I love you and I need to protect you. And he could continue to have bad luck and continue to get in bad situations that so like Ryan is like his guardian angel, but also hates him and hopes he dies. Like, I don't know, it could have been so complicated and interesting. And instead they just killed him off and it became a standard issue crime noir vigilante movie with car chases. I don't know.
I'm buying the alternative. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being an interesting. It'd be more like a psychological drama or something.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
and that's kind of what, like, when I was hearing the zeitgeist about this movie, that it was a subversion of Fast and the Furious. It was written as an action movie, but then was something else, and that disappointed audiences. I guess maybe it was overhyped for me in that way, that I thought it was going to have no action movie elements. And so when those showed up, like, I didn't really think the violence was disgusting or over the top. I thought it was nuanced and cool, and I liked that. But
So it's mainly the car chases and like the kind of like gangster stuff.
yeah, and like that whole part where he like beats the guy up in the strip club and there's all these dead-eyed like topless women. Like,
Oh, that's great.
that just seemed like that was so like none of them were reacting, and I was like, someone's freaked out by this. Someone's the new girl and is having a panic
but
attack.
that's-
Like, really?
No, because that
That's
is
such
a
a
mob.
cool-
That's a mob place, though. Like they are used, and like that is a common thing. Because I actually thought
I
that
don't
was
know. Again,
Yeah,
that's like
'cause
a
I'm
traumatized.
crime drama mobster movie thing that I find really boring and annoying. Like, and here's the babes, the malls.
They've all seen-
boring,
they've all seen so much
annoying.
shit.
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt like, oh, and now it's the obligatory boobs. Like, it just had devolved so completely into a standard bro movie at that point.
I disagree with that a lot because we never get a shot where the boobs are center frame. Like they are always cut mid frame off, and I thought that was interesting because like
It
they're
was
they're
still-
all nude, and none of them are shot in like close ups. Like most
I
of
know,
them.
but it was still just like it. I don't
but-
know. It just felt
but,
so
like, the
predictable and basic
contrast-
to me.
But like if you were to watch like an actual crime movie back to back with this, it would be an extremely different kind of movie. And I think that's where it is still a subversive of like, you know, you keep comparing it to Fast and Furious, but like I mean,
I've never actually seen
I-
it, but I mean,
that's what I was about to
that's
say
just-
because I'm telling you right now, if you watch Fast and
Yeah.
the Furious, you will vomit because it
I
is.
know.
it is
I
awful.
mean, and like also, like I was kind of thinking about Dirty Harry a lot while watching this for these parts
I
because there
haven't seen
are
that.
like these really zoomed out, far away like strip clubs where Dirty Harry, who Clint Eastwood, again an homage to Clint Eastwood with this character a little bit. He goes to strip clubs. There are shirtless women, but that's not the focus. They're kind of just side dressing. He's like on a stakeout and he sees people having sex, and it's like from far away from a binoculars. Like there's a naked dead body, but it's never like center frame. So it's like kind of this just boobs as decoration in these crime violent movies that I was like, again, just seemed like kind of standard issue. Like, I don't know.
But that's
like
what I found-
60s, like when everything went crazy after the Hays Code disappeared kind of vibe.
Yeah, but this movie isn't concerned with that, so it would still be
No.
a subversion because, like, Ryan Gosling is, you know, the main character. He's not actively wanting to enter this world. He's wanting to
No.
get out of the world. Every time he
I mean,
enters
and Dirty
these
Harry
places,
didn't either.
Okay, yeah, I
but-
haven't seen Dirty Harry.
Yeah, he didn't want to enter that world either, and he was kind of a vigilante, but he was also an awful person. And at least Ryan Gosling in this was a good person. I don't know. yeah,
That's
I don't know. The movie lost me after that point. And I guess also increasing screen time of Albert Brooks also lost me. It was
One thing I realized this time watching, because I've never seen Albert Brooks, I don't know who he is, but one thing I noticed this time, because I was like, why is his performance working for me so well? Like, why does he feel so cold and monotone? Like, he was like kind of keeping up with Ryan Gosling in my perspective and point of view, and I realized he has no eyebrows. Like he literally shaved his eyebrows for
What?
this
That
role.
is how you would have to make him
Yeah.
look creepy, because otherwise he would be sweet, befuddled dad, because that's who he actually is.
And I
He
thought that
he
was
was
a
so
beautiful
monotone because he
choice.
was fighting not to be funny. I don't know. I'm just.
But I mean, one scene I specifically love with him, I was going to ask you about your opinion of the scene when he kills Bryan Cranston's character, which we haven't really talked about. Like, what did you
it's
think
so
about that and like
sad.
how that happened?
Oh my god, I love that. I love that. How he when he does it, and he's just the way he talks is just so weird and effective. He's just he just slashes his arm open,
Yeah.
and then he's just
Yeah, and
he's
like,
"Ah,
it's
it's okay,
okay. It'll
it's
be
over.
over soon.
It's all right."
Yeah.
Yeah, just the way he reassures him. He's like, "All right, it's all right, it's all right, it's over."
I think
it's so
I think if
creepy.
I think if all of his murders had been like that, I could have bought him as a character. But because his other murders were like big, stabby, grimacy, punchy, like kind of murders, I was like, this is so out of character for this human being. It looks so unnatural to watch his body do this. Where
Well, he
like to
only
have
murdered
him, yeah,
the other mole guy, which he was pissed off about because that was the entire inception of this whole escalating issue. Was that guy set up the job?
he still should have just calmly slit his arm. That should have been his MO, and then that would have fixed that character for me, because yeah, he's just quiet and slow, and he doesn't ever do anything big and dramatic, and he's menacing because he's precise.
I
Yeah.
took that scene as he really, like, truly, besides the fact that he is constantly annoyed and like angry at this Bryan Cranston character, like he truly likes him as a person, is what I took.
Yeah.
like he truly
And so he
respects
gave
him,
him an
and
immerse-
he's
he
like
killed him in a merciful
sad.
way.
Like, why did this have to happen? And he says it like even before the kill. It's like, I was excited about this. I was gonna
Yeah.
have my name on this car. And like all this stuff, and I love how he does that performance, and it's so big, and it's like he's almost like welcoming him in, like, all right, it's gonna be okay, like just come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, and then he just slits his wrist, and he's dead, and I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
man, and
Yeah,
then
that
he
was the
bad
best
about
kill
it.
in the movie.
And he does it with like, I guess is like this is like a little character trait that I guess Albert Brooks came up with, is like he has these little knives, and he has like this collection of knives, and he like puts it in like a little glass container. So it's like that was probably one of his favorite knives, and this person meant that much that he's like, I guess I'm gonna kill him with my favorite knife so I can always remember him.
And he looks really depressed about it, and is sitting in his lonely apartment. Yeah.
I guess one thing I need to ask you, Helen, since I think you like this element of the crime stuff, is like, what did you think about Ron Perlman's performance? Because you said you liked him, right?
Yeah, I like him. I like movies where they kind of use how weird his face is to his character's advantage, and that definitely worked
His
in this.
lips are
Yeah.
weird to me. Like there's that close up where he's on the phone call, and it's like his lips, like it looked like a prosthetic. Like his lips
Yeah,
are
like
so
how-
weirdly shaped.
How is this a real person? Like, some people are just famous because they look so distinctive, and he is one of those people. And yeah, and it just, I don't know. I totally bought him as the flunky guy, like the middleman who talks a big game and seems like the scary one, but he's actually subservient. And yeah, I mean, his character worked for me. I don't really have a whole lot to say about him.
I love that he's just the spoiled gangster. He's just like a spoiled
Yeah.
kid kind of gangster,
Yeah,
kind of
and
pathetic,
he
which is
can't.
probably what most gangsters are actually like in real life.
Yeah. That's what I love. Like, he can't read a room. He can't, like, foretell anything. And he thinks he's really cool, but he's not. And, like, that's, like, the element of him that I really liked. And, like, that's encapsulated in that scene where he sees this cool car. And, like, we're talking business, and he's over here trying to talk about, like, this car being sexy. And then even when he gets the phone call from the guy, he tells him, like, you're not good at this, are you? And he's like thinking this is all a game when it's not a game. There's like a funny story. I forgot what the movie's called, but there's a movie about poker that Aaron Sorkin wrote. And there's like a character in it that's like this pro poker player. And then this person who's never played poker before, who's just drunk, comes to play this game of poker. And like poker's a lot about bluffing and like reading the room. And this character, the drunk person, is completely confident because they're drunk and they don't give a fuck. And this professional poker player thinks he's bluffing the entire game. So this professional poker player ends up losing all his money because he assumes this other person is outacting him or outwitting him at every turn. And I felt like Ron Perlman's character was that. Like, he thinks he's in this like imaginary like Goodfellas movie. In reality, he's the one causing all these issues. Like, if he would have just
Yeah.
accepted the money from that initial phone call, if he would have just showed up, got the money, nothing would have happened. But in his head, he's like, oh, this guy's trying to fuck me over. So I'm going to go send a hitman to kill him. And I'm going to do all this shit because I'm cool.
Yeah, and this is like all plot stuff that I did not even absorb. This is news to me. I was like, why was he so mad? Why did he deserve to die? What was his connection to everything? He was the middleman, but how exactly? Like, yeah, that's cool though. I like that. That makes me like his character more.
I agree with you, Helen. I was just gonna say that even on this, I've watched it like 3 or 4 times now, and even this viewing, I was like, I had to pause it to really like figure out what plot was, like what the hierarchy was with the money, like what the money was at the pawn shop, but the money belonged to the greater gangsters. But why was it at the pawn shop?
Somebody else was trying to compete with somebody else. This is my problem with all noir and gangster and crime. Everything is there's like these huge convoluted spider webs of like people that owe people things and people that have grudges against things and power dynamics. And like the only mob movie I like is The Godfather because it's really actually just about family and loyalty. And you don't have to pay attention to all that. But anyway.
Well,
yeah.
the general
but
gist,
it could have been more clear for sure.
that's interesting. I feel like I struggle with plot elements, and this was like clear on my first watch. Because, like, to me, it's very simple. There's this East Side Mafia, which are like New York Mafia. They're coming to LA to invest money, so they send $1 million to this pawn shop to hold it until they get there.
I'm getting a headache.
And then Ron Perlman finds out about this. He sends a group of idiots to rob that money, and then he's going to rob the people that he sent to rob. So it gets all confusing, and it's like, well, who robbed what? I don't know, because it was 2 robberies, and just to make it seem like a normal day robbery. But then that whole plan falls apart, and that's it.
I can't.
They just have $1 million of a New York mafia that are actual mafia, where these LA mafia guys are just acting mafia, which ties in with the whole, like, they're actually movie producers. Like Albert Brooks' character is just a movie producer, and they're just playing mafia because they have a lot of money to fuck around with, and that's what he says about Ron Perlman's character.
Why is he
like,
so dangerous and scary then? I don't know. God,
because they're willing to kill people and they're psychopaths, I guess. But.
Yeah, because they make movies about this. It's like all like a little internal metaphor of these people who are obsessed with crime movies. And then this guy's like, well, I'm going to be an actual mobster. Because there's no actual mobsters in LA in this little narrative that they kind of weave.
Yeah, see, I think I could watch this movie 10 times and still struggle with this.
Oh my God.
And it's just like my brain is just allergic to this kind of plot. Like it's like I said, it's like when someone explains to me the rules of football, every football season, I'm like, I'm going to get it this year. And they explain it to me and I kind of understand they're like running and they need to get they have a certain number of chances to get somewhere. And like, I can't, I've given up on trying to watch football because my brain just bounces off of the rules of it. And I feel like it's the exact same with these like crime dynamics. I'm like, okay, someone wants to seem cool and someone else wants to be something that I can't do it. You said and you explained all that and I'm sure it was very succinct and I'll listen back to this and be like, yeah, that makes sense. But like now in the moment, I'm just like, my head is just spinning and I'm just like, I give up. I'm so sorry.
Like, I feel like the main thing that makes it confusing is that, to me, is that they never show the person in the car, that was there at the robbery and then was in the car chase. They never show the person in the car, and they could have easily just fixed that by showing the Ron Perlman talking to a person that was telling him what happened, and we also saw that person in the car. Like, I don't know, they could have fixed it really easy by just connecting those two things, and it would have made a lot of sense. But
I don't know, because I don't feel that from the car specifically, because like I feel like they kind of wrap it up with the TV station reporting like there was a attempted robbery but no money was stolen. So it's like, okay, this was all planted. Like this was all fake. Like
what was that? But that made it more confusing. I don't understand why did the store owners say that no money? Oh, because he was connected to the gangsters that were putting the
it's
money
all
there.
mob money. So that money isn't real.
I get you. Now I get it right now in this moment. But okay. In defense of Anthony's side, though, it is like it's because that's all that crap is not that important to the movie. It was probably just
yeah.
But it bogs me down.
This movie's all about
and
the
takes
vibes.
me out of the movie trying to understand all that, and it like when every movie has elements like that, and if I try to like pause it and puzzle it out, like then I'm not in the flow of the movie and I'm not watching the characters anymore. And it's just like, this is why I kind of avoid this whole genre.
I guess I got to talk about the couple things I don't like, because there's actually a couple things that I learned or realized I didn't like in this movie, this watch. Specifically, I think the way he kills, I think his name is Nino, which is Ron Perlman's character. The way he kills him, I like the whole setup. You know, he like drives him off a cliff, smashes into the car smashes down onto the beach. He's wearing like the Halloween mask, fucking drowning Ron Perlman. But then it cuts. And I thought this was really weird. The movie is exactly 100 minutes, which is an hour and 40 minutes, which I think is like anytime a movie is like an exact zero, that means they probably had a quota from the studio, which I think this was the director's only studio film. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had like, we have to be under 140 or you're not making this movie. And I thought this was weird because every kill we linger. Like, I mean, we see the finality of the death and then we see a reaction shot. And in this sequence with Ron Perlman's character, like he's drug out to the beach, and then we get the wide shot of Ryan walking towards him, or I guess grabbing onto him, like kind of insinuating that he's drowning him. And then we just cut back to Ryan Gosling on like a porch or something on his apartment, just on the phone. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, we didn't get a kill of this guy? Like, he is like literally the person who started this whole thing. Like, if he would have took the money, none of this would have happened. And I thought that was very deflating. And like, what do you mean? Like, we didn't get like a drowning sequence? Like, I mean, there's so many great, like that would have been a perfect moment of drowning. I mean, Ryan Gosling had an awesome drowning sequence in Blade Runner. So like, I was like, wait, what the fuck? And then like it gets even worse with Albert Brooks' character, where this doesn't happen at all in the film. Previous to this is intercutting, which I found very weird because the entire film almost plays in real time in perspective. Like all the car chases, all the action sequences, we're always with Gosling in real time as things are happening. And then with the Albert Brooks, the finale, which I love, the like sit down in the Chinese restaurant and they're talking and he's like, you know, I'm going to get this money and like I can promise safety for Carey Mulligan's character and her child and all this stuff. But you, like, you're always going to be hunted down and you're never going to have a life and like all this kind of mumbo jumbo. And then it's intercut with like them going to the car and then he gets stabbed. And I mean, some beautiful like cinematography with the shadows and like the visual metaphors of what's going on and happening. But I found that deflating too. I was like, this is the big bad guy. Like, this is the final boss of a video game. And we're getting it in between a dialogue, like a monologue sequence. And I thought that was also deflating and weird. And I don't know, I was going to ask y'all if y'all noticed that. Like, that the last two deaths, like it almost felt like the movie had this amazing tone and like pace. And then these last two, like it felt like the movie was just trying to end. And then even like you said, Helen, like there was like the end where he's, you know, seemingly dead and then he blinks. I think the film should have cut to black right there. But then we get like another couple minutes of him driving. And then you mentioned Carey Mulligan's character checking his apartment door and like all that kind of stuff. I was like, why wasn't that cut? Give me Ron Perlman's actual drowning scene and give me Albert Brooks' actual death, like not in a shadow, but like the actual scene. Did y'all notice that, or did y'all feel any of that, or is that just me?
No, I didn't really notice any of that. I mean, this was the section of the movie that I was kind of zoned out anyway. But I don't know.
Well, I just thought this is like the third or fourth time that I've seen the movie, and I still in my brain didn't quite remember how the movie ended. And I think maybe part of that has to do with the weird editing for the last scene, the not seeing the actual death, and then just I guess the fake out of him being dead, but then he's not, and then he drives off, and it feels kind of weird. I don't think it's bad. I don't think any of those things are necessarily bad. I just think they're interesting, kind of weird.
Yeah. I really like that it's left ambiguous whether or not Ryan Gosling is going to survive.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. I like an ambiguous ending. I like to be left at the end of a movie feeling both satisfied, but like up to my own imagination, where like I'm going to sit and think about this for the rest of my day tomorrow now. Like, is he going to survive and where is he going to go? And what is he going to go repeat this whole cycle in a new city? Is this what he's done before? Like, it's just so rich that like, if he had just seemed dead and it was the end, that would have been too neat almost.
Yeah.
So I really love that he the movie got me back that it left it vague whether or not he was gonna survive. And I thought that was a really satisfying, good ending to this story.
Yeah. What I wish it would have done is a Taxi Driver ending, where that was like, is this even real? Like, is this just like a weird daydream kind of situation, and I think that would have been perfect for this film. Like us just cut to a driving sequence, and we're like, wait, is this a memory? And like, and Carey Mulligan's character's here, and music, and then it just starts fading out. Like that's what I kind of wanted.
No, then I would have gotten this like I've been tricked by Nolan. Like I don't know, that would have frustrated me. That would have been too much.
Yeah.
That would have been like
I was about to
like
this is not
too many
Inception.
layers.
Like it's just not that kind of movie. Yeah.
No.
It doesn't need the ambiguity at the end.
One thing, like in my research, that I really loved about this movie is like the director moved and his whole family to LA because he's actually from Denmark. I think he's a Danish filmmaker. Or I think Danish. But he moved his whole family down, and then Ryan Gosling like moved in, and then Carey Mulligan didn't have an apartment or a place to stay, so she asked him if she could live with them too. And then the editor came to live with them, and then the writer came to live with them. And then, like, all these actors, like Ron Perlman and Albert Brooks, would just stay over for, like, weeks at a time, like, during pre-production.
if they were
like,
just
while
all
they're...
friends, then why didn't this crew reassemble later? Did they hate each other? Was it a miserable experience? Like,
No,
dang,
like, from
there
my
should be a whole
understanding, they
series
loved
of
it.
people.
The one who left was the director, because his following film, Only God Forgives, he went to, I think, Vietnam or Thailand. I forgot which of the two nations, but he like literally just went over there and lived for like a year, because that's like his whole thing is he'll just
But
like
he
relocate.
just should have brought the editor and like one of the stars all with him, and he should have been like a traveling troupe, and then his body of work would be good.
What I loved about those stories is like they would all just like create the narrative as they were going, because like the original script was a Fast and the Furious clone. And they just like demolished all of it, and like even Ron Perlman like came up with all his character archetypes, and Albert Brooks came up with all his character archetypes, and even Bryan Cranston, like originally he didn't want to be that character because he was doing Breaking Bad, and that started to pop off. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want to be this character unless it's something unique and different." And then the director was like, "Well, do whatever you want." He's like, "All right, well, I want to have a limp, I want to smoke a lot of cigarettes, and I want to be like a motor mouth, like this weird old guy, because right now in my show I'm playing this like school teacher." And this was like early on in Breaking Bad, so like he was like, I want to do something like more eccentric, and like I want to be the antithesis of Ryan Gosling's character. And but yeah, I guess that was one thing. The final thing I was going to bring up that we haven't really talked about was like Bryan Cranston's character. Did y'all like his like little performance or his eccentricness? Because he's kind of like a douchebag. Like if you really think about it, because he's like totally like paying him half what he's worth, and like it's kind of insinuated or implied that all these crime jobs are from Bryan Cranston. Like he makes this kid do these driver jobs, and it's almost like the Ryan Gosling's character is like, I just wanted to be a mechanic, and he can't say no to anything because he's just a nice guy. So he's like, yeah, I'll do this for you or whatever.
Yeah, but he's done crimes before. He knows how to do it. There's something about him that's mysterious and broken. He could have said no. But yeah, no, I love Bryan Cranston. I'm happy to see him every time I see him, and I thought it was really cool to see him in this and to be that kind of a character that is so different from Walt.
Yeah, and he's like a father figure. He's kind of an important like for the main character. Like he is like his dad. A bad influence, but like a still just like a really it's cool how in the scene where he is found where Driver finds him dead and he's just so sad. Like I thought that was a cool, because he doesn't show emotion very much. And then also I noticed, and I always wondered about the scene where Ryan Gosling talks to Bryan Cranston and he discovers that Bryan Cranston told the gangsters about Irene, and like he talks the most. He says the most words in that scene than in any other scene in the movie. And I always wondered if it was like something that they filmed that first before they really got his character down, or if
that's just the
that
person
was a choice.
he's closest to in the world. Yeah. That's just the person he can talk to the most easily of anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just he's most open with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just thought that was so. It stands out, that scene, his acting.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling. So yeah, that's a cool character.
So did y'all have any other points y'all wanted to say before the big question?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm looking through my notes. No, not really. Except that I suddenly remembered that I didn't mention Nightcrawler when you were asking me about movies that this compared to, and I'm like, this is so similar to that. Like if you think about, well, LA perfectly captures that imagination of like LA is this huge sprawling city, but
It's
and then
God, I love
taking an
it.
actor who had a previous career doing kind of like
As a
romantic
heartthrob.
roles, and then
Yeah.
transitioning. Man, it's
Yeah,
cool that
I
that's a
agree.
thing.
How's the
That's a genre.
soundtrack to that movie? Is it like vaporwave? Because
No.
that's what I want.
No,
No.
Okay.
no.
I want to say it's by like Thomas Newman or something. This is like Indiana Jones kind of Star Wars type of score because like there's themes and it's like very
Right,
punctual and it's like it's almost
Yeah.
like a contrast to the movie being this like dark depressive thing. But yeah, like Nightcrawler and this would be a perfect double bill because just the way they both
Yeah.
capture LA, but the LA that's probably a darker version of LA. Like this is just a mundane kind of place. So yeah, I love that movie and this movie. This brings up the final question. I'm gonna start with David because I hope you're on my side. David, is Drive canon?
Yeah, I'm just happy you're on my side. Honestly, we
Okay.
finally got one where we're both like, yeah, 10 out of 10. Like that's oh my god,
Oh god,
that's
I was
incredible.
literally about to say if you say no, we're about to record for like 2 more hours because I was not gonna stop recording until I got a yes.
I mean,
Well, and it's- I mean, it's
agree-
like-
I agree that it's Cineverm canon. I'm just not putting it in my personal canon.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. See, I was thinking you were gonna say no, so I was like, all right, let me start with David.
I can see that this is a beautiful, amazing achievement of a movie. I just personally don't like the genre of it.
Yeah,
But it's not the movie's fault that it devolves into a bro movie at the end. Like, it's still beautifully shot and it's still some of the best performances I've ever seen. It still has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. Like, it's definitely canon.
Yeah,
It definitely deserves all the hype. It's just not ever going to be one of my favorites.
yeah.
That's
There's
awesome.
definitely
Okay.
like it's fine to have that distinction of like a subjective canon and whatever objective canon.
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I obviously as well put it into canon. I've talked endlessly about the positive elements. But yeah, one thing I wanted to just hit on before we wrap up here with you, Helen, because you are a famous playlist maker. I mean, like, what did you think
Yes.
about the actual song choice? Because I don't think, like, I know you like some of the songs, but like, do you think this movie like has a perfect soundtrack? Like the way they
Yes.
are laid out?
Yes, I was so impressed and so refreshed by it because I used to buy film soundtracks like as a teenager, and I would like pay attention to movies that came out that had good soundtracks. And yeah,
It's kind of
and
a dead
it just
form
feels
now,
like a
in my opinion.
yeah, it's a dead art. Now it's just all needle drops and it's all just like
Yep.
winking to the audience. And it doesn't like the songs and the people complain, oh, that song was too on the nose or that song had nothing to do with what was going on. And it's like such a fine line to walk to like get the right vibe and like lyrically kind of refer to the movie, but not too directly. And like this movie just walked that line perfectly. It's like this, yeah, it had a perfect soundtrack. Absolutely perfect. And it's a dying art. And I'm so sad that no one mimicked this after this movie
Yeah.
was made. Like everyone freaking mimicked Juno, which did have a great soundtrack for that movie. Like that movie is another perfect soundtrack movie, as obnoxious as people think the songs from that movie are. Like it fit the energy of the movie exactly. And it's one of the other examples I can think of a movie with a perfect soundtrack. And then everybody copied it. And that vibe only works for that movie. And it's stupid in every other movie. And it's like, everyone should have copied this. Why didn't they? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
So-
David, what do you think this was the last great soundtrack movie, or is there another movie you can think of since
Oh my
this?
god, off the top of my head, oh my
Yeah.
god, that's so hard because I don't.
Or is
Yeah,
there-
music isn't something I pay a ton of attention to.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's just not something I have like a list in my head of. But this one does stand out. I mean, you know how you're always talking about before we talk about movies, like you're like, oh yeah, I was listening to the soundtrack like in preparation for the episode or whatever.
Oh, it feels so good.
I actually did that for this. Like I actually did, and it does the music and stuff. It defines. It got me into that genre, like whatever you call that genre, like 80s synth, the kind of retro pop. It got me into that. Like just listening
yeah,
to
like
that
that
kind of music.
revival,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely had an effect
electro
on me.
revival.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, during college, this is the kind of music I was listening to for sure.
Our next film we're all three gonna watch is Titan. I think that movie has a glorious soundtrack. I
Interesting.
love it. It was
I don't
actually
remember.
what you know. Oh my god, are you serious?
Yeah, I
Oh
remember a
my
lot about that movie, but I do not remember the music.
No. Okay, you're gonna have to pay attention to the music. I love. I forgot the name of the band, but Helen, you're gonna find this funny. What do they call it? Something Islands. I've sent
Future
you playlists with them.
Islands?
Yeah,
I love
I
them. They're my
I
favorite.
discovered them through Titan.
Oh my god! Well, Titan's already my favorite movie. Then,
Yeah,
'cause they're like one
it-
of my favorite bands of all time.
And
Oh damn!
I'm
I'm
I am
excited now.
I think that movie is a cool contrast to this movie where like this is kind of I know you don't like the crime elements, but in my heart this is like an anti-crime movie, and Titan for me is like almost like an anti-body horror. Like it is that genre, but it's like tackling it from like an inverted perspective in my opinion. So I can't wait. I'm so excited to rewatch that movie.
Yeah, me too.
I think that is going to conclude this review of Drive. If I can find my outro. Yeah, so thank you for listening to this episode of Cineverm. We would be grateful if you could leave us a review or rating with your thoughts or comments on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you could share us with your friends or family, as that helps us in our journey to spread the love of cinema. And we will see you next week.
See ya.
Cineverse.